In a previous lesson, we touched on this right-hand bar here called tasks. And in here, it's not just tasks, we have other options down the right-hand side on tabs. I wanted to give a little bit more information about some of the tabs on here. So the first thing I'll do is open an object, such as our main OB1 here, and we'll see that these update. I just wanted to give an example of instructions and where you find things like that and how they look. So let's make this a little bit bigger. And we can see here that we have some basic instructions in the ladder logic space. And if I open the bit logical operations, we'll see things like normally open, normally closed. Here's one of our assignment coils, set, reset, flip-flop, and things that you should be familiar with at a very basic level. We have all of our other types of options here, such as counter options, math functions, and even some legacy things that are supported in older versions, but are now legacy or outdated with newer instructions. We also have some extended instructions, and these depend on things like firmware, version of TIA Portal, and other things like that. We have some technology objects, and this can be a little bit frustrating, going back to the whole real estate type thing where you don't actually have enough room to have everything open. But we have some technology objects for things like PID control, motion control, and things that are a bit more technical. We have some communication. Let me minimize this one and this one. We have some communication, so S7, PLC to PLC in the Siemens world. And we have some open things such as the TSEND, which you will see a lot of if you want to work with things like email or web processing and things like that. OPC UA. We'll touch on OPC UA later on in the course because it is baked into Siemens as well. And it's really, really simple to use and you can get a lot of usage out of it. Some web server things and some other. Interestingly, Modbus was not given its own folder. It's in others, but Modbus is also built into TIA Portal. You just need to drop one of the objects in. And we also have some optional packages which depend on what you have installed. Coming into testing, if we are online, this is where you can run, stop, and clear the memory for the PLC. We'll touch on this again later, but you need to be careful with what you do with this. You can completely reset a PLC from here or stop it inadvertently. Call environment, if we had more than one type of instance for an object, so say you had function block 1, but that was used 5 times, you can select which instance you want to look at, which is important for monitoring. Breakpoints and call hierarchy, we'll come on to these in a bit more information later as well. And then we have tasks. Not quite sure why they call it tasks because there's only ever these 2 things in here, which is your language and resources down the bottom, what you want your editing language to be. And depending on what you have installed, language pack wise are the only options. So it's very unlikely you will ever touch this. And then find and replace. And find and replace is not always available either. It depends what object you're in, where you are in your project, and what state your project is in at the time. So that's it for the tasks tab. And here you have libraries. Now, libraries is a special tab because it hides a whole different world of library management behind it. If I click on types here and click this, what looks like a book with 3 blue dots on it, the whole of TIA Portal changes and opens this types management window. Now, it doesn't look like much in here because we don't actually have any library objects right now. We will later in the course, but here's where you manage your library, how it's used in your project, updating libraries, upgrading objects, and things like that are all done here in this main window. And this little task pane on the right-hand side is just a viewing portal into that. You also have global libraries as well, which sit outside of the project, and we'll touch on those as well. But that's it for libraries right now. And down here we have add-ins. Add-ins are a way of enhancing TIA Portal's offerings in terms of configuration or just context menu options for things such as changing a function block to a function. There's an add-in for that you can download from Siemens. You can write your own add-ins if you know what you're doing and install those, share them amongst Siemens users and things like that. And we will touch on this in more detail later on in the course. Really, the point of this lesson was just to dive in a little bit further into what this right-hand pane does, because it feels somewhat disconnected from the rest of TIA Portal on the account that everything else seems to have a purpose. Down here is properties and diagnostics. On the left-hand side is all your navigation and creation of objects. And on the right-hand side is sort of everything else that doesn't really fit anywhere else. And the fact that this side is contextual or dynamic, depending on what you're doing, can mean that you don't really understand what's going on. So I just wanted to dive into that in a little bit more detail.